Welcome to Inside Arvada, the City of Arvada's podcast, where we bring you conversations with the people who make Arvada a thriving community. Hear stories about the past, present, and future of Arvada through the lens of the city team members who help make it all happen. Explore the complex topics impacting our community. From the roads you drive, to the water you drink, the parks where you play, to what your neighbors think. Join us as we take you inside Arvada. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Inside Arvada podcast, the City of Arvada's official podcast. We are really excited for today's guests, and we know this is a topic that some of our listeners have requested and asked for some more information from the city about, and that's the issue of homelessness and how it affects our community here in Arvada. And Alex and Hudson are two homelessness case managers that work here for the city. So a little bit about them. Alex started at the city in August of last year and has been in Colorado for over 10 years now, and most recently was working as a case manager at the Denver Rescue Mission within a shelter that had helped over 500 men. She also is a small business owner in Arvada and has worked for a variety of different nonprofits in the Denver metro area. And then Hudson grew up in Colorado and has a master's in organizational leadership from Colorado Christian University. Did his undergrad at CU, which Sean and I aren't going to hold against him, and started in the field of homelessness in August of 2020, working with the Denver Rescue Mission, and has had a couple different jobs around Denver with the Rescue Mission and Urban Peak in Denver, and then also came to start the work at Arvada in August of last year. And as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Sean. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Great.
Yeah, very serious topic for today's episode. You know, a lot of our episodes are really fun, talking about parks, talking about the nature center and festivals. And so it was interesting to kind of shift gears and talk about a topic that I know our community feels passionate about in a lot of different ways and different perspectives. It was really cool to hear more from Hudson and Alex about the day-to-day work that they do. One moment that stood out to me was Hudson explaining how he got into this line of work back when he was in high school. So with that, I'll give you a little cliffhanger, and you'll have to listen all the way to the end to figure out what motivated him to get into this line of work. Alex, Hudson, thanks so much for joining us. Welcome to Inside Arvada. Well, first off, congrats on being the first two-person guest that we've had on the podcast. Yeah. Let's begin by telling us a little bit about yourselves and what you do for the city.
Hi, my name's Alex. I've been with the city since August of last year, and my title is a homelessness resolution case manager. So I work directly with the unhoused population and try to work with them on a plan to get into permanent housing.
Yeah, and we're two peas in a pot, so I do exactly her same job.
Same amount of time about, right?
Yeah.
At the city. Yeah. Well, thanks for being with us. So we know that homelessness is a really complex topic, both locally and nationally, and it doesn't necessarily have any straightforward or simple solutions. But part of the multi-pronged approach to addressing homelessness is really the work that you all do as case managers. And so tell us a little bit about that work and kind of how does the process start of getting someone into case management?
Yeah, I think people want a one-size-fits-all solution when it comes to homelessness, but we're working with people and everyone's different and has different barriers that get them to where they're at. So we get referrals both internally and externally to work with individuals. And when we do that, we meet with them and do an initial intake meeting, and we figure out what they need to get housed and the barriers that are keeping them from getting housed. So if someone needs documents or benefits or income, we help work with them to get those. And then we also figure out like if they have evictions or legal barriers and what they need to take care of those to get into housing.
And you were, before we started, you were talking a little bit about a lot of folks come through our court system is how you kind of first get connected with those people. Is that generally kind of how it's going?
Yeah, Arvada has something called One Small Step Court. So it's a court with resources for individuals who are experiencing homelessness, and that happens every Tuesday. So Hudson and I are there, and that's how we first got acquainted with our clients and met most of them.
Yeah, and so each year the Metro Denver Homeless Initiative does a point in time survey to try to determine the number of unhoused people in our communities, and that's a 1 day initiative each year. And it just happened recently on January 28th, so we don't have those results quite yet. But Hudson, tell us a little bit more about that count and what we can learn from doing that survey.
Yeah, great question. So, first of all, shout out to everybody that participated in this year's point in time. We could not do it without volunteers. So, thank you so much for everybody that did volunteer or played their part in this. Yeah, so basically, we can learn certain trends and data and learning, is homelessness going up? Is it going down? Maybe what populations we're seeing? Is it individuals? Are we sheltering more? Are we unsheltering more? Like, where are we at in our space? And so, we can draw that data, and that's just on mdhi.org. You can type that in and they'll pull up your pick count. And you can kind of see that back in like 2017, the total for kind of Metro Denver was like 5,116. And if you fast forward to last year's count, it's now 9,977 as of recent. And we kind of guess that Arvada has a certain percentage in that. And so we can learn that if we looked at Denver's escalation, like percentage of how fast they grew, we kind of partition that to Arvada and our current idea of how many people are experiencing homelessness, which may be 250 to 300, give or take. And so if we took those growth rates that I mentioned over the years and we put that into forecasting, by 2035, currently, like I said, 250 to 300, forecasting to like 2035, which is 10 years from now, we would be at a population somewhere around 690 to 700 at the current trajectory for homelessness.
Yeah, I'm curious to learn more about that actual count. I mean, I know I've seen the call for volunteers. Take me a little bit. Are folks literally going out and trying to just hand count every unhoused person in our community, in our city? Is that literally how it works? Like, I'm kind of curious to know a little bit more behind the curtain about how this all works.
Yeah, great question. So basically what happens is from 6 p.m. on Monday night, this past one, to 6 p.m. the next day, we do have groups of volunteers that go out on 3-hour shifts. And they literally have a phone and there's a survey on their phone. So we try to make it as electronically savvy as possible. And they just click through the questions. And clients that are experiencing homelessness maybe not want to do the survey. But we do incentivize that with like bus tickets or gloves and some socks and some candy if they do want to take the survey. And then there's also magnet locations. So people can actually go to, this year it was at the Rising, and they surveyed a ton of people there. And then also, but we do have groups that literally meet up. You become best friends with your folks right there. And then you go out in your own cars and the volunteers' cars, and they go out to all the different locations where we have seen homeless people over the past year. And they just go out to where we suggest, and they meet and greet people and do the survey with them. Yeah, so it's very, very volunteer friendly and very volunteer needed. So we can't survey all of Arvada without our volunteers for sure.
Oh, interesting. Thanks.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And like we were talking about, really, that's one piece of the puzzle. Your work is one piece of this puzzle. And so what are some of the other resources that the city kind of participates or helps with addressing homelessness that we have?
Yeah, so with our roles, we're working more with people once they've already become literally homelessness, but there's a whole spectrum of prevention to intervention to aftercare. And so with what we do, we're working with people to get into permanent housing and then also find ways to sustain that. But Arvada also has the Housing Authority, which provides affordable and subsidized housing. Eviction prevention exists through nonprofits and counties. There's food banks, things like free GED certifications and programs and employment services that can help bring people above the poverty line and maintain housing. And then also there's services for people with disabilities. And just recently, we were able to use a grant that was awarded. And so we have a hotel agreement with Suburban Studios, and this provides temporary sheltering for individuals. And it's really meant for people who can have a permanent housing solution within 90 days. And then in addition to that, Hudson and I are hosting monthly homelessness response meetings. So we'll bring in other community providers and talk about like what we're seeing and what we can do.
That's really great. I know y'all have told some good stories with the new transitional housing efforts that are going on. So it's nice to hear about kind of like that's still not the whole puzzle, right? I know there's a lot of nonprofit work out there and everything, but there's a lot of different facets, even just within the city, of those resources. So thanks.
And a lot of the work that you folks do is, providing the resources and getting the homeless population like ready to even take advantage of other resources that are out there. So like the city itself doesn't necessarily have our own city managed shelter or resources, but you need stuff like IDs and you need a lot of stuff to actually be ready. And that's a lot of your work, right? Is getting these folks even prepared and able to take advantage of other stuff that's out there.
Yeah, totally. That's a great question. Kind of navigating how many resources do they need? What resources do they need? Where do they go? When do they go? What time are they open? Are they closed for a holiday? Are they not closed for a holiday? What's the best route that gets there, right? Um, we like to say too that America was built on the idea that you should pull yourselves up by your own bootstraps. And some of the work that we do is we like to say, hey, homeless people sometimes figuratively and literally are not given boots to pull up. And so we want to give them the opportunity to pull up their own boots and give them the boots if they need it.
And then wanted to just kind of provide you the opportunity to share some of the stories that I know you've shared with Katie and I during some weekly meetings of some of the folks that you've helped out in our community, because I think a lot of people might have kind of a picture in their mind of the typical homeless person and how they got there and the reasons why they're there and whether they chose to be there or not. But in hearing some of these stories that you've shared with us, I think it really puts things in perspective of how these people get there, how they, where they grew up. There are a lot of people from Arvada and just they ran on tough times. So share some of those stories with our listeners because they're super powerful.
Yeah, one story that comes directly to the top of the mind is a client that I'm working very closely with, and they came to Arvada to buy a car off of, I think it was Craigslist at the time, and they bought a car off of Craigslist. Went into the McDonald's off of Ralston Road and went in, took her keys in, walked in there, went to the bathroom, came back out, and her car was gone. And her car got stolen. She locked her car, just got stolen. Her phone was in there, her ID was in there, and she just had no way of figuring out the next stop. And that was the first time that she was homeless because she went into the McDonald's before she was going to drive back to New Mexico. She likes to drive at night better. And so she was going to drive, it was like 10 p.m. at night. And she never been to Arvada, literally just came here just to drive her car back. And that was the way she was going to get back home. And that was 8 years ago. And that's how her homelessness journey started. Because now she wanted to go back home, but in order to get on a Greyhound or anything like that, you need an ID. And she's from a reservation down in New Mexico. And so she was getting an ID from a reservation is really hard. Additionally, on top of that, being out of state. Another person that I'm working with heavily, they got married, grew up in Arvada, been in Arvada for 30 plus years, got married at Faith Bible Church, and then about a couple of years later got divorced, which happens to a lot of Americans, and she didn't know how to readjust to a single income life with 3 or 4 kiddos. And so over that time, or the next 3 or 4 years, she did become homeless, and her kids moved up and out of their house, but she became homeless, and she is Arvada blood. And so those are a couple of the stories there.
Yeah, thanks for sharing.
Yeah, I think that really puts into perspective just too, back to like you already mentioned, Alex, like everybody's story is different. And the visible homeless that we see or think of isn't the whole story. So good to get some perspective. And so a bit of a change in gears, but we've been experiencing a lot of cold stretches lately. And we know there are some resources out there. Can you help tell us a little bit about those?
Yeah, so last year and years prior, there was something called the Severe Weather Shelter Network. They lost funding, so that no longer exists. So different nonprofits and entities have stepped up to fill that gap. And so in Arvada specifically, the Rising Church Mission Arvada, which operates a day shelter, now operates for cold weather if temperatures are below 20 degrees. And Other Jefferson County resources are Recovery Works, and the MAC operates in Westminster, but only when it's 0 degrees and below.
That's great. Yeah, and I believe Jeffco still has a page though of like some of those cold weather resources that we tend to link to in our on our Arvada website when those weather cold snaps come in, so we can put that in the show notes as well. Toward the end of each interview, we like to provide our guests with the opportunity to clear up some misconceptions or some misunderstanding about the work that they do. We'll try to keep this to about a half hour long episode, because I'm sure you all could go on and on and on about some of the misconceptions about your work. But Hudson, tell me a little bit about some of the most common things people don't understand about being a case manager.
Yeah, so I like to tell kind of the process of getting an ID, right? Because in order to get an ID, that gets you a job. That means you can apply for housing. That's kind of like the very first step. And let's say if you're homeless and you get your backpack mugged or you lose your ID, what is that process to get restarted, right? And so let's just start with, I like to go through this exercise. It's maybe a little long, Sean, so I'm sorry. But in order to know off the top of your head, in order to reorder a Colorado ID, you need to know your driver's license number, last name, date of birth, issuance date of your most recent ID or license, last 4 of your social security number. I don't know if Sean or Katie or Alex, if any of you guys know that.
Zero chance. Yeah.
I don't even know it, and I do this work all the time, right? And that's just the very start of it, right? Let's not even get into the thought like, hey, I'm at a computer. How do I even get access to a computer to get on the website to look at what I need? Then secondly, where do I mail it? If I'm homeless, where do I mail my ID once I order it? On top of that, let's just say, how do you pay for it? If you lost your wallet, you may not have a credit card, and you may not be able to pay for that online because you may not have any money in the bank account. But they don't take cash. If you like flew a sign for a while, they don't take cash over online, right? And so there's a ton of barriers there. Then let's go into the next level. Let's go into maybe if you were from Arizona or from California and you're trying to order your ID. That is extremely difficult for you to do it. In order to get an ID, you have to go through what's called the exceptions process. And there are 3 parts of the exceptions process. It is lawful presence, proof of residency, and then 3 categories of identity. And so on here as well, let me look up the DMV requirements here, but your first one for your lawful presence, that first part is a birth certificate or records such as a U.S. court order of adoption with birth information, an expired U.S. passport, certification of naturalization, certification of citizenship, consular report, and other verifiable records. So it's like we're trying to get our ID so we can get a job. Do you think I have my birth certificate?
Yeah.
Right? And then we start there, and then it goes back to the same questions. How am I going to be able to pay for my birth certificate, and where am I going to mail it? Right? We go down that category, because in order to order your birth certificate, you would have to know off the top of your head, you would have to know your mother and father's maiden name. You would have to know the city, state, and county you were born in. And then you have to provide some type of verification that you are who you say you are and that you're just not ordering it. And then again, it's still $30 to pay for that birth certificate. And we're just at the start of the process, right? Then let's go into 2 proofs of residency, which is the second step of the getting your ID. That is, you need to have first class mail. Again, I don't even know where to order to put my ID, right? You need an insurance policy. If you're homeless, do you have an insurance policy? A phone bill, a pay stub. No, I don't have a pay stub because I'm trying to get the ID so I can get a job. Do you have a lease agreement? No, I'm homeless. What about a credit card statement? No, because I can't, because I lost my wallet because I'm trying to get the ID. A rent receipt, a bank statement, a utility bill, or a vehicle registration and title. And you need 2 of those. Then let's go into proof of identity. You need it from one of these 3 categories: government, medical, family, military, employment records, police or court records, school records, tribal records, religious, or other. And again, this is the very start just to get your ID. I'm working with somebody right now, and he's from California originally. We ordered his birth certificate from California, and it is not going to get here till April. he is not going to be able to get his birth certificate, again, the very first step of, of the process to get your ID, till April. That means that the fastest that he's going to get his ID, if he hits every single appointment on time, he's able to get all these other proof of identity and proof of residency. He's not going to get his ID till June of 2025. And we started this process in December of 2024. And again, this is just so that we can get an ID, so that he can get a job, so that he can start applying for housing. This is just the very start of that case management process that we go with. It's incredibly difficult.
Yeah, that's crazy. It makes me first feel fortunate, and also like I should go make several copies of my ID, as you mentioned before we started recording. But it's just such a cycle of like you don't have those resources, and so they're asking you to have these resources, and it's just like, and that's with someone like yourself helping this individual out. Imagine those folks that don't have that. So
Yeah, absolutely.
It really has me like reflecting too on just like it takes 1 second possibly to become homeless. Your car gets stolen, and then years to get out, right? Like 8 in the case of this woman that you told the story of the stolen car. But like, that's just, you know, the scale of that is just baffling. And I imagine, because you know this process really well, that people not having an ID is a really common occurrence in the community of people who are unhoused.
Yeah, absolutely. And then let's say you did all that work. What we've seen more times is that if they don't have a safe place to store that ID, then let's say you get your ID stolen. And then we have to go back to the same process of it takes another 6 months to order his ID. That is just the destruction of perseverance and stamina in somebody's soul. It just breaks them down. Yeah.
can't imagine. Before we go to lightning round, we did want to ask you one more final question about for our listeners who
Hey, actually, I want to make it a 2-part question, if that's
Okay.
okay. I'm changing it up on us
Okay.
here,
All right,
live
go
in the
for it.
moment.
Yeah.
I was hoping that maybe you could tell us first a little bit about how you got involved in and wanted to be a part of this work, because I don't think we've talked about that. And then the follow-up to that being, what do you do to stay in the work and keep yourselves taking care of yourselves? It's really hard work. So I think it'd be good to hear both of those if you're open to it.
Yeah, so I just remember volunteering from a young age and knowing that I wanted to do this type of work. And I've loved the city of Arvada, and I came over from Denver Rescue Mission, but I was just excited to be a part of the work that's going on here in Arvada. For myself, to take care of myself, I think the biggest thing is having boundaries and knowing there's always going to be need and I can't help everyone, but focusing on the people that I can help and the things that I can do. Another thing for me is there's so many people who want help, but I am not willing to do more than someone's willing to do for themselves. So many of the people that we're working with are so smart and so creative and so resourceful. And so I want to empower them to be able to do things by themselves, but walk alongside them in that process.
Yeah, one of my first interactions with this work was I actually did a homelessness immersion experience, and I was a junior in high school, 17 or 16 years old. And so I was on Colfax, and I decided to spend 3 days on Colfax, sleeping on Colfax to see what it felt like to be homeless. And this was through my church, and so it was very structured and I was safe and all that. But I was standing outside of a Walgreens, sitting there with my sleeping bag, and one person came up to me and spat on me and said, "You are such a piece of crap. Go get a job, you lazy slum." And I'm a 17-year-old. I'm a 17-year-old just doing this on my own free will because I thought it was going to be cool as a 17-year-old. Say I went homeless in Colfax. And then as I'm wiping my spit off and that person walks into Walgreens, the next person came up and gave me $5 and said, "Keep your head up, don't listen to him," and walked into Walgreens. And that moment changed my life because I said, I am not going to be the first person. Everybody, no matter what their situation is, whether I was actually homeless or just an immersion experience, I am going to choose to give my life to people that are treated like this, because that sucks to be in that situation. And that was kind of the first hook there. And then I did a year of overseas missions work and came back after COVID hit. And I was like, I don't know where I'm going to help out next. I don't know where I'm going to help out next. And just like we've all seen, at the corner of the intersection, a guy had the word help on it. Signed up for Denver Rescue Mission the very next day, and I've been in this work ever since. And then for self-care, I love woodworking and listening to heavy metal rock through my headphones and just working with wood and doing that on the weekends. And then also being with my wife. She's a great woman, so I love being with her.
Thanks for sharing that. It's heavy work, and so we feel that in this room, and it deserves space to just so much respect for both of you and the work that you do. So, okay, we're gonna lighten it up. We're gonna do the lightning round. So, some quick questions to get to know you all. Fun things about you. We maybe just got a little sneak peek of music taste, so we'll see where that leads us. So first, what is your favorite thing about Arvada? It can be a place, a fact, a hidden gem.
I got engaged in Arvada.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Where at?
In Old Town.
Okay.
So it's actually where I met my husband too. So he brought me back. It was just in the parking lot, but we went out to dinner. That wasn't in the parking lot.
Yeah.
But the engagement happened in the parking lot.
I love it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my favorite thing about Arvada is just the people. I mean, I'm involved in Kiwanis, also the Arvada Chamber of Commerce. I go to Storyline and play basketball there on Thursdays. Shout out to Kyle Mack. I just love the people of Arvada, just great people.
That's great. First, last, or best concert?
Last concert, one of the best, was 21 Pilots.
Nice.
My first concert was with my mom, and I brought her to Brantley Gilbert at Red Rocks. That was my first one.
Wow, that's a big first concert.
Yeah.
What we've kind of already answered this one, but we'll do it one more time. What kind of brought you both to Arvada?
Yeah, I just love doing this type of work, and I was excited to see that the city of Arvada posted this type of role doing case management, and I just wanted to jump into what they were trying to start out here.
Yeah, I think I look at Denver and their homeless population, I'm almost overwhelmed by how much there is, but I feel like we can make an impactful, meaningful impact in Arvada with their homeless population. So that gets me excited, is that it's a small enough population that we can do something if we all rally around and do something together.
What was your first job?
My first job was Little Caesars Pizza.
Nice. Like cash register, or were you?
Oh, I did it all.
Oh,
Yep.
okay. It's an one-stop shop.
Yep.
Got it.
And my first job was a hooper scooper for dogs in my neighborhood as a kindergartner. My dad said, get out there 7 o'clock on Saturdays before cartoons. So I was poop scooping people's lawns.
Still in some work ethic there. And then I know you're both relatively new to the city, but you've done a lot of work already. So what has been your favorite project you've done with the city?
Yeah, I would say it was really cool when we started here, meeting everyone from the OSS court, and I would say plugging in there and getting involved with the folks who are already there.
Yeah, and I would say I'm most excited for the Suburban Studios project that we're working on right now. We've been able to put about 30 folks in there right now, and we actually just put our first person into their own housing. They're paying for it at market rent, doing everything they're supposed to, and they just moved in a week ago, and we're looking forward to all the other people that we're going to move out of there, and they're all doing the things. They're working. Again, that bootstrap.
Mm-hmm.
They're pulling themselves up by the bootstraps. We just are giving them the boots, and they're being successful, and that's been exciting.
That's great. Well, thank you both so much for coming on today. We're really grateful to be able to share both your stories and some of the stories of people in our community that you're working with. So thanks.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Okay, before we jump into our news and events section, as a reminder, we always love to hear from you all, our listeners. We know this was a big topic today, so if you have any questions or anything you'd like to know more about, please feel free to text us with that link right at the top of the show notes, or you can send us an email at podcast@arvada.org. We love your feedback and ideas about, other episode topics or things you'd like to hear more about. And then upcoming news and events. So the city manager search that has been going on for a few months now is going back out to recruit some more candidates, as the city council decided not to select any of the finalists for the position. And so a timeline for that is still being determined. But just like with the first round, there's information posted on the city's website, and we'll continue to link that information and share more as we have updates for you. And then we're really excited to announce that the city has been recertified as a silver level bike bicycle-friendly community with the League of American Bicyclists. And so the city first actually got this designation all the way back in 2008 and has maintained the silver level since 2014. So a really great award that really helps to exemplify the city's dedication to and commitment to access to safe, efficient, and convenient cycling for everybody who is in Arvada. And then I mentioned last time a section of the Ralston Creek Trail will be closed starting this week for about 4 to 5 months. And that's going to be just a small section of the trail, but it's near the intersection with the Croak Canal near the Westwoods Golf Course. It's just east of Quaker Street and west of the Croak Canal there for a flood mitigation project. And so the project's going to improve the stream health and flood carrying capacity. And then there's going to be some other kind of aesthetic and amenity improvements for public use. So a really important project, and we have more details about that. We'll link in the show notes, and there will be detour signage in place for folks traveling through the area. And then, Sean, what do you have going on?
Yeah, so work continues on the Lake Arbor Center and Golf Course Master Plan. We have a open house for the community coming up on February 20th over there at the Lake Arbor Golf Course Clubhouse, and that'll be from 4 to 6 p.m. And so you can learn more on the project webpage at arvadaco.gov/Lake Arbor Master Plan. Excited to really dive into the community engagement portion of that project. And then also we have our first festival coming up of the year. Winterfest is on Saturday, February 22nd, and that's moving right to the heart of Old Town, the Old Town Square. It used to be over in McElvoy Park, so now it's right in the middle of Old Town, and that's the city's annual multicultural celebration. This year we're really leaning into the cultural aspect, so there'll be lots of live performances, plenty of kids activities, and of course it's always free, so join us February 22nd for Winterfest. All right, thank you so much to our guests today, Alex and Hudson. Be sure to tune into our next episode featuring Sarah Kolb from the Arvada Arts and Culture Commission. To stay in touch with the podcast, you can visit our webpage at arvadaco.gov/podcast, or you can email us at podcast@arvada.org. Please be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the show. Today's podcast was recorded and edited by Arvada Media Services, and I'll leave you with today's fact. Anywhere between 250 and 300 people are homeless in Arvada, and approximately 10% of those folks have been provided the opportunity to exit homelessness through the city's transitional housing program at Suburban Studios.